Okay, I know that Lori and Mia is on their way, so I think as we get going, they'll probably join. But we would like to have all of those that was at camp, if you want to come on up and give a highlight, recap, anything that you feel was special, happened throughout the week to bring the camp out week to all those. Many I know watched different parts of the meetings online, but for those that was there, we'll bring a little bit of that spirit back here with us. So all of those, I think we have 3, 4, 5, 6, and when they come, there'll be 8. So if you can come on up and express yourself, we'll go from there.
Well, I'll start. I was really thankful to be able to go to camp. It's a special time when you get to gather with everyone and you just know that you're going to be blessed, and I definitely was with the topic and the theme and just seeing everyone there. And something that really stood out to me was when throughout the week there was a course, I think 10 people asked for their baptism. And being able to see that happen and literally see the change in people, how they were so happy and they just look lighter. It really brought me back to when I was baptized at camp 16 years ago this week. And I'm just thankful for that. I'm thankful that God is still working and calling and still active in my life as well.
Well, like I shared during Sunday school, I taught the 18 to 20-year-old class. And we did an activity with a mirror that I thought was impactful. So they wrote on the mirror how they see themselves with dry erase marker. Like they could write, I'm a teacher, or I am sad, or I deal with anxiety, or whatever they wanted to write of how they view themselves. And then with permanent marker, they wrote how God views them and how God sees you as a child of God, a perfect person made in his image. And then when we erased, just the dry erase part erased of how they see themselves. So only what was left is how God sees them. And that seemed to make an impact on them. So that was neat to be able to lead that class and just to see the change that they had throughout the week. And new people come every year, which I think is also exciting. You get to meet new people and fresh faces. So it was a nice week together.
I guess I'm next on mine. But I was very thankful to be able to go to camp out this past week. Some of you may know I'm doing a work study at my university, and I wasn't sure, going through the interview process, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to make it to camp this year. And we knew that we would have 1 week off throughout the whole summer, but thankfully it ended up aligning with camp out, and we got things situated, and I was able to obviously attend, and I was just very blessed by the whole weekend. And I was in Chucky's seminar, and it was definitely a blessing. I was actually going to share that activity as a blessing from that week, but just very, very, very thankful to see not only my sister render obedience to God, but a couple of my different friends, and just to be able to be with the family of God.
Excuse me, I may cry, Sister Ruthie. You understand me. Had a couple different highlights, right? Of course, York City was a big hit. That was amazing to hear that, because the youth needs to realize that they are perfect in the image of God, no matter what they do. And of course, our highlight of Madison asking for her baptism. But I was also selfishly going for myself. You all know what I'm dealing with in regards to my mom and the different things we have to go through. I did get hands laid on for guidance. There was in my seminar, the Word of God was spoken, and I'd like to read it to you. Thus saith the Father now, hear the words that are delivered unto you this day. You see now, and you have heard how my servants of old followed my will, followed my word, and they are blessed because they did. They did follow me with their heart. And now today I would say unto you, my children, my creation, I have called and purposed each of you, to draw breath and to have life. And yes, if you serve me, and if you are obedient unto my words that I give you, if you hold fast to trusting that I am the Father, though you face challenges, though you feel downtrodden many times, know that I'm with you. And yet, if you seek to please me, your Father, the Father in heaven, says this day, thus saith the Lord, blessed art thou, blessed art thou, blessed art thou for what you have done. Blessed art thou, and now that you would continue until you would come and you would reign with me in that paradise that I have in this heavenly abode that I have created for all of my creation, that forever they would live with me. And yes, you will be part of that. So hear now these words. Hear these words that are delivered unto me. And know that my peace is with you. And though you may be facing trials, even in this moment of your life, even in this existence of time, know this day, know that this day, that I, your Father, will carry you if you but look to me, and you will feel me, and you will see me, thus saith the Lord.
Okay, so I may be a little long-winded. I'm going to give time for Lori and me. Okay. It was a blessing to go to camp out. I mean, Kingston has been asking since we went 2 years ago, so we already knew that, that was definitely going to be on the calendar for summer. There was so many, I could stand up here forever, just the blessings that I experienced and even my family members experienced just being able to be at camp. Like I said, King just truly enjoyed himself, and just seeing him and just how happy he is to be around the family of God, and to see the other kids, and just it was just, that was a blessing in itself. And I think the first thing on my list is, prior to going to camp out, summertime is always rough. The heat's bad, and I travel a lot, and it's a lot on me physically. And prior to going to camp out, me and my family prayed about it, just asked God to give me the strength to do, whatever was needed while being there. And I think Monday night or Tuesday, by the time that rolled around, I was in so much pain. Like, my sciatica was horrible, like probably the worst it's ever been. And I could barely walk. And every evening after the meeting, the brothers, asked if you wanted to be anointed to come up front. And initially, I walked out and I was going to go back to the dorm and lay down. And I was like, no, let me go be anointed. And I did. And not even probably an hour later, the relief that I felt was just incredible. I could, walk around and thank God, because even the next day, Kingston, he's not here today because he's sick. He woke up and he was sick, and I was like, okay, I'm going to walk to the store and get him some medicine. There's no way. There's no way possible that I would have been able to do that with the pain that I was in the day previous. So I'm so thankful that God, even in that moment, and just how fast it happened. I'm going to be honest, that has never happened to me before, where I've been anointed and I've felt immediate relief. So I was so grateful for that, and so thankful, because I know that I'm so unworthy, and God is so good to me each and every day. And even seeing my nephew, I know when we got to camp, he was struggling. Quali, which is Stacia's son, I could tell before we even arrived that he was struggling. I didn't know what he was struggling with. I didn't ask, but I knew that he was going through something. And I know that he even went up prior to me going up, and he asked to have hands laid on. And even after that, his whole attitude changed, his whole demeanor changed. You could tell that it was a weight lifted off of him. And I'm just so grateful for that, that even in his young age, and even we had some issues with transportation. Even in that, prior to getting there and even leaving, on the plane, he's like, we're going to say a prayer. And then after they had, like, I don't know whose class it was that had little Jesus dolls. I don't know where they got those from. But he had one of those. So even on the plane, because we had issues coming on the plane, King is very nervous. He's a very nervous flyer. And he pulled out his little Jesus doll. He's like, it's going to be okay. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be okay. So just even in that, just knowing that, just that he knows that God is always going to be there and God is always going to protect us and everything is going to be great. Just really, the week was just amazing. I'm just for all the blessings and as Sister Alyssa said, to see all the young people just ask for their baptism was just incredible. And then one last thing, I think they're coming in now. The one last thing was for sacrament, I was told to buy a lot of wine. And there was a lot of wine left over. And Sister Jackie, we were just going to send it to her branch. And in that, she was going to take it back to her branch. And then she came up to me the next day. And I'm not sure, it's a smaller, I don't even know if it's a mission or a branch. One of the sisters called her and told her that they didn't have any wine. I guess the branch is so small that they didn't even have any wine. And she was like, Sister Jackie, could you help us? So all the wine that was left over from camp out went to that branch of mission. So that was also just a blessing that, that they were able to use that, and camp was amazing.
I don't really know what to share, but I remember that I was gonna ask, but then ask for my baptism. But I didn't think that everybody there would go up and keep talking about it. And then I went back to my seat, and because I got up to use the bathroom, because I didn't know what was happening, because I don't know what was happening, but in my head there was in my head it was like back and forth saying, oh, go ask, don't ask, I don't know, go ask, I don't know. And after we got done, I looked at my mom and I was crying, and I told her, can we talk to Uncle Chuck? And she was like, yeah, we can talk to Uncle Chuck. Do you want to talk to me? And I said, no, I want to talk to you and Uncle Chuck. So we went to go talk to Uncle Chuck, and I told them both that I wanted to be baptized, and I said to Chuck, I said that I want to be baptized because I wanted to go through life with Jesus and he can help me with stuff. And I was just glad that I went to Chuck and my mom instead of going to someone else. And I forgot her last name, but her name is also Maddie. And when I saw her, she was like so happy. She was excited. She gave me a hug, and every time I would see her, we would give each other a hug. And she said that when you get baptized, it's going to be the most best thing, and will never be a mistake. And I just felt so much joy from her, because at camp, I'm not going to lie, I didn't have friends because I was nervous. I only hung out with King and Trevea, but sometimes they would be sleeping, so I hung out with Mom and Mike. And, on the walks, it was me, myself, and Jesus. And I told Jesus, because my grandpa passed away, and my mom made the bird cardinal, and we saw a red cardinal there, and I told Jesus that if there was a cardinal there, that would mean that I'm going to ask for my baptism. And I saw a cardinal walking up to the gym, because it's a long walk, and I saw it, and I was just thankful that God's giving me signs, and I know that he's going to watch over me, and that he's going to help me when I go to get baptized by Chuck.
Amen.
I just want to take a moment to thank God to be able to go to Camp Out. It was such a blessed time to be gathered, and even the seminar class was my favorite part. It was honestly the best seminar that I've ever been to. It was even so nice during one of the seminar, after one of the seminars, when everybody kind of got prayed for in our class because we had something like a burden that we were holding on to. And Brother Brian, I forgot his last name, went around and prayed for us about this certain burden that we were holding on to. And after that, like, nobody really left this seminar. Everybody just wanted to kind of stay around and just like still be gathered in the Spirit. And even like then people started asking for their baptism. So it was so beautiful to be around that kind of spirit. And even going back 7 years later to that same camp, I still thought it was such a beautiful blessing to be able to go there and to have that opportunity to praise God and even meet more new people there. And everybody was just so kind and nice, and I'm just even so thankful to have had the opportunity to go. So I want to thank God for that.
Amen. Very nice. Thank you. It was nice to hear, and some of the things I heard, I didn't, excuse me, I didn't even know. The experience that you read, I didn't even heard that, so that was beautiful. Yeah, that's very nice. Sarah was our head deaconess for the week and did a wonderful job. And her experience about having the strength to be able to do that, there was a lot that she was asked to do throughout the week. So God to be able to heal her, and I think just to give you an idea, she qualified when I spoke to her after she had prayer the next morning. She had said that the pain went from a 10 to a 1. So that just shows you how merciful God was. And I didn't, like I said, even to be able to walk to get, there's some stores around there, but it's a couple blocks away. It's several blocks. So, it's still quite a walk. So, it's little things like that that we say are little, but to God are big. And, yeah, it was pretty cool. I could probably talk a lot about different things with that. But the scripture that I wanted to talk about was mentioned the last day, but he didn't really talk a whole lot about it, and it's in the 16th chapter of Matthew. Because the whole week was talking about kind of I am and just trying to understand. And I think when you understand and they dissected that scripture a lot, and I know a lot of you had heard a lot about that, God certainly understands and understood who he was. So I think for us, I think it's very clear to say who God is. Christ, when he came, through all of his persecution, through everything that he went through, he was very locked in on his identity as well, of who he was. In several scriptures, but I know one in 3rd Nephi, it even says when he came down to the people, he said, "Behold, I am Jesus Christ," and just declared, and throughout his whole process. So I think he was pretty, when we read all about that, he's pretty locked in as far as kind of who his identity is. But I wonder sometimes with us what our identity is when you take it to us personally, and that's probably what I wanted to just talk about a little bit, is just about identity theft. Paul Aaron had one of the evenings, he was up front with us, I think it was Monday night, and he wasn't speaking, but he was up with us, and he had an incredible, I guess it was a vision, because he just said he was sitting behind us as the officers, and as Lucas was speaking, he said that he felt almost like he was carried away in the Spirit. And he spoke for a few minutes afterwards to try to identify a little bit, if you were on that evening, I think it was Monday night, where he talked about, and that's what he talked about, is our identity theft, and just trying to make sure that we understood. And he said that God took him from the Garden of Eden, and then all through time, all the way through the restoration, all the way through, and showed the impact of our identity and how the evil one was trying to take the identity of his people. And he was so overcome, I talked to him later, that he said that he couldn't even articulate even a portion of what he actually saw. But he talked about the importance of our identity. If you remember, several years ago, that was a pretty big deal, that companies have been created because of that, about identity theft. And what a, big piece of that is. And I just, when you think about that, and you just think about yourself and what you're known for as far as your identity. I look at Sister Flo, and one of the consistent things that I've heard now for years about her from so many people of all ages is that Sister Flo was my Sunday school teacher. And so she's known for that, because she did that for, 40, 30, 35 years. So that's one of the things that you could say that our sister's known for. And so you could look at yourself and you could kind of come up with different things that you're known for. Diane was certainly known for her chocolate chip cookies. Everybody liked her chocolate chip cookies. She loved to garden. That's probably something that she would be known for when you looked at her identity. So when you think about that, what is your identity when you think about yourself? Even to listen to Madison today, and again, there are pieces of what she said I hadn't heard before either. And the one statement that she made that I thought was so profound that we all can certainly relate to is she talked about how there was times at camp that even the circle that she talked with and was with wasn't around, where they were sleeping or doing something else. And she would go on walks, and it was just her and Christ. And man, when she said that, I thought, wow. As hard as that might have been when you're by yourself, to have the attitude and God to open up her to know that that was her time to just commune with Jesus, and them two just walking together and having those moments, that says a lot. And that's pretty cool. And so when you think of yourself with your, because you could very easily at that moment say, oh, I'm identified because no one wants to be with me and I'm alone or whatever. But instead, her identity, when she was walking and she was thinking of that, this is going to be the time that I'm going to be able to commune with Christ. And Christ is walking with me and we're talking together. And it says, see the difference? There's a huge difference with that. So when you think of yourself, what do you think about? Anybody want to think about, when you think about your identity, what are you known for? Or can you think of someone else, and maybe it's easier to do the opposite. If you think of somebody else, and if we look in this room and you think of somebody, what do you think of as far as part of their identity? And I could certainly do this. I could literally go to each one of you and do this myself. But what do you think of? When you think of somebody else in here, what do you think of? Oh, Lori, DeFady, and her big hugs. Very nice. Chuck and Alyssa, teachers.
Rob and Cindy are very hard workers.
Rob and Cindy are hard workers. I'm saying that in case maybe the people online so they can hear as well. I think of Ruthie and her cards and the joy of that. I think of Don and his hard work, and I look at the lights, and I look at so much of this building, and I look at so much in my house, and he's always there. And and like I said, I could do this with all of you. But I think that is such a big piece of us, is to kind of know who we are. And and the reason I said it to do it the opposite, because sometimes you don't want to say it to yourself, because then you think you might be bragging or whatever the case is. But I think that's the second piece of it, is if you know of something that you do good, does other people see it? So does other people see that? I could say a lot about Angelo, but now when I look at Angelo, I think of that he loves Charlie, or more so that Charlie loves him, because he's my dog sitter, and he's over there and helps me with that. And Charlie is always so happy every time I come home from all my trips and everything, and I know it's because Angela takes such good care of him. So now I look at him differently. Probably 6 months ago, I would have never thought of him as, because, with a year or whatever the time is, because time goes fast with me, but whatever that window of time was, I wouldn't have looked at him and saw that, because that wasn't a piece of our life together. And now all of a sudden, when I look at him, I think of that. That's one of the things I think of, because that is a huge piece for me, is a huge relief and something, but it's now another piece that we share. So I just think that whole identity is such a big piece of that. And we're going to go certainly read a little bit about that. And Christ, in the 13th verse of the 16th chapter, it says, Jesus came to the coast of Caesarea Philippi, and he asked his disciples, saying, whom do men say that I, the Son of Man, am? So he asked them, we all know this story very well, but he asked them, who do people say that I am? And he goes on to say, some say thou art John the Baptist, some Elias, others Jeremiah, and one of the prophets. And then and I think we understand that answer. That was like a lot of the prophets of old that they were bringing up. There was, there was prophecy about prophets would come forth in the Old Testament. So in their minds, these were all the different ones and some of the people that they talked about with that. So it's a pretty standard answer as far as what people would say and what they had heard. And then it's interesting because, again, when I asked for you to say what you identify yourself at, it was pretty hard to do. But when I asked you to say somebody else, it was a little easier to do that. And that's why with this, when he asked about what's people saying, it's easy to quote someone else or say what someone else is doing, because there's really probably no skin in your game, no ownership from your end on that. But then he turns the table, and then he says to them in the 15th verse, but whom say ye that I am? And I think that's where he flips the table in the 15th verse. Because now all of a sudden he's saying, now, but who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter in 16 said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered and said unto him, blessed art thou, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood hath not revealed it unto thee, but my Father which is in heaven. And I say unto thee, thou art Peter, and upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. And I think that moment when Peter declares that he is the Christ, that was like that aha moment, because then he goes back to Peter and he calls him by name, and he says that now you understand going forward what that legacy is. Peter's life changed, I believe, at that moment. Now, obviously, we know the transformation when he got the Spirit of God and how he was different from that moment forward. But that moment of him trying to understand that going forward, his goal in life was to represent Jesus Christ. That was who he was. It's easy to look at Diane, as I said, that you would see her as someone who made chocolate chip cookies. And I ate so many of those. But to me, when I think of Diane, I think of someone who represented Jesus Christ every day. And to me, that was her legacy. And that's what I hope that we try to understand, is that Ruthie sends a card, and to her it's just a card. But what she doesn't know is the inspiration that she has and the diligence to do it, that the person that's receiving that card, the moment when they get it, the love that they feel, the spirit that they feel, maybe they're having a bad day, maybe this is happening, and all of a sudden that is a vehicle to be able to now feel that presence of God. So when I said before that I think of her as, the card lady, it's so much more than that, because she's representing Christ in those moments. You see what I'm saying? So that's where it takes it to that next level. And that's what he was telling Peter, is Peter, you've realized who I am. You've realized, and because of that revelation that you understand that of who I am and how you're going to represent and show me in everything you do, that is what this church is going to be built on. That understanding, that revelation going forward, that's what it's going to allow us to be unashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ, to be able to move and do what God wants us to do. That's what I think we'll understand. In Romans it says, whosoever believeth on me shall not be ashamed. And that's what, when you do your actions, that's what it is that you're not being ashamed of Christ. And I think all of us, it's a nice reminder for us to just realize that life is hard, and there's a lot that's going on. It would have been very easy for Sarah to just say, man, I'm just, health-wise, I justify it, I'm feeling bad, I'm just going to, just lay in bed. And I'm just going to take the next day off from camp, and I'm not going to do it. But instead, she powers through, asks for prayer, and see how God immediately rewarded her efforts and was there. So again, you can look and you just see how God just works with us when we end up trying to be the best we can. It's hard to imagine, that he wants us to be his arms and feet and legs and representation. He wants us to be him in this world. And when you think about that, it's pretty, it's like him or us, and then him's like, you can't even, it's hard to even put that in the same picture, that we now have the responsibility to go forth and be the representation. But that's what he was telling Peter, is that's what you are now. You're not to go forward anymore as the fisherman. You're not to go forward anymore as, this person that kind of believes and sometimes does good, and then sometimes you doubt me, and sometimes you do all these things, and then when you doubt me, then you feel bad, and then you take moments to where you're not consistent in that. What I want you to do is overcome all that and be the legacy of me in everything you do. And by doing that, when you make a mistake, you'll know that I'll forgive you if you ask. And when you go through situations, you know that you'll have the power through me to get through those situations. And that's where I think it is with us, that we just need to understand that we need to go forward and understand that we're in the middle of situations and trials and troubles and things that go on that we can certainly talk about so much, is that Jesus is with us to help us. And he will help us through those situations, that he doesn't see us as a time when he's not with us. But it's more the opposite, that in those times where we feel like we might be separated, he's trying to draw closer to us to be able to allow us to realize that he's never went away. And we have a tendency that whether it's on your commitment sheet of where you're trying, because I did this, when you're trying to make your commitment, here's what I'm going to gain, here's what I'm going to lose, here's why I'm unworthy, here's that, and you create all these lists. But it's more the opposite, to where Christ is saying, no matter what your list is, I'm with you. Because I know that as I made the list, but what I realized after I ended up making my commitment unto him, the list didn't matter. Because all of a sudden the things that I thought were important before, the desire wasn't there. So maybe before, where I had this desire that I thought all these things I was going to lose, one, I didn't have to lose near as much as I thought, but what I thought I was going to lose, once I had God with me as he's promised with his Spirit to be able to be there, a lot of those things that I thought was so important, I didn't even have a desire to do it anymore. So all of a sudden that list that I had so big, now all of a sudden was a lot smaller that I thought was big things. And that's because of the identity that he gives us, that we're a child of his to go forward. And I hope that makes sense, is that we would be able to understand that God has promised to be with us. And that's what I think he was telling Peter. And that's where I think we need to understand. And that should be our rallying cry as believers, is that we know that we stand up for Jesus in this life because God is with us. And he shows that in all of our actions, and people see that in everything that we do and everything that we say. When we do it, and we do it for Christ, people see it. And we might think it's just normal, but to others it's not normal. It's not normal when you're going through a situation and you're able to smile and be able to go forward. It's not normal when you're feeling sick to be able to get out of bed and still go. It's not normal when your knees hurt so bad, but yet you still are able to come here. It's not normal to be able to be the chauffeur and drive, as Sharon does, everywhere where they go. She's able to do that. Some people would say, I don't have time for that. I'm not doing that. That's not normal. It's not normal in this world, but it's normal for the people of God, because the love that you have, to you, it's just normal. It's just, to you, it just happens because that's just who you are. But you're good like that because of what God's done in your life. You're not good like that because of the human flesh that you are. And I think we need to understand that. We need to understand that that's how God is. And the earlier you understand that, it helps the process as you go forward. Because then when things happen, you realize, okay, maybe some of it's self-inflicted, but also some of it might just be happening because you're in a situation now that you're able to now shine your light even more than you ever did before. And that's what I think was interesting at camp to watch, is because we felt, and maybe it was just because of some of the meetings, and I just came back from Pine Top, and that's one of the things they do out there after the tent meetings, is at the end of every meeting, they always say, anyone that feels to come forward and we'll have prayer. And maybe I just had that mindset, so that's why we did that every night. But it was interesting that every night we had people, those that were unbaptized and those that were baptized, come forth and have prayer. And I said that before, is that I think sometimes one of the things I learned when I was in Pine Top with the Native Americans is we would serve them hot dogs and we would talk to them. And one of the questions that we'd always ask them as we were talking to them, we would ask them if they wanted to have prayer. And I might have mentioned this before. But one of the things that I noticed is almost every time you asked them if they wanted to have prayer, their answer was yes. I would say out of the 100+ people that I probably asked in the several days that I was out there, every single person but one said yes. And it really caught me back, because I thought to myself, if I was in that same situation and someone came up to me and said, do you need prayer? My first reaction would be, no, I'm okay. And justify and just, no, someone else is in way more need than me or whatever. And my first response would always be no. Would I be in that position to where every one of them said yes? But every one of them, then when they sat down and you start to talk to them, the first thing would say, what do you want prayer for? 90+% of them then talked about their family, talked about their kids, talked about their neighbor, talked about someone in their life that they wanted us to pray for. And almost to a person, then we would have to say, well, what do you want us to pray for you? And then once we drove in, then they would make it more personal for themselves. But every one of them wanted prayer, but they also was looking out for everyone else within their family. So even that, like I said, just those lessons with that. But it reminded me this past week is that we need to be more dependent on Christ in everything that we do. And if the inspiration is there where they say, do you need prayer? I'm not saying that we need, whether you get prayer or you don't get prayer, but I think sometimes we just automatically almost blow it off because it's almost the response, maybe it's just me, but it's almost the response that when you're passing somebody and they're like, how you doing? I'm okay. And it's almost like you don't even break stride as you're waiting for that answer. Because in your mind you're thinking, that's the response you're going to get. Good, okay, and you just keep going. You wonder if all of a sudden as you're doing that and you're walking by, terrible, and you're like 2 steps by them because you're just not expecting that answer. It's almost that routine that things sometimes we get into. Do you need prayer? And maybe that's God saying that even if it's, because we don't need, when people would come up for prayer as ministry, they share what they want to share. We don't dig into wanting to know details because God knows the details. God understands. If you want to share some of it, it's nice to know, and we'll pray for that. And that allows me to continue on, in those prayers throughout time when I know specifics. But at the same time, we don't need to know specifics. But God does. So maybe sometimes, and I didn't mean to get on a tangent of prayer, but I'm just saying that's just an example that all of our acts, if in our mind we're thinking that everything that we're doing as a representation of Jesus Christ. That's my identity. And we think of that, I think it might change our perspective just a little bit. I pray, I don't know how long I've got, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, who knows? All the years that all of us have. None of us know what that is. But this past week especially, but I thought of it way before that, I hope, and my prayer is that when you think of Chuck, you don't think of Chuck, you think of Jesus. That you think about the impact that Christ had. That it's not the fat old man that you see every once in a while, maybe some of the things that happens, that we have good times, and we've had a lot of good times together. But it's more the inspiration that God has directed through you that's allowed impact to others, that praise goes back to God because of that. That has always been my prayer. And that's why I made the comment about Diane. She loved to garden. She loved to cook. Sister Flo is a great Sunday school teacher. And people's impacted lives, that will never change. But yet when I look at her, I don't see Sunday school teacher. I see a servant of God doing the best that she can do. And that's going to be her legacy when she leaves. She's living a legacy that came down from her family, that she's passed on to her children, that she's passed on to so many other people. And as much good as she's done, that's the legacy that she's leaving. Her identity is Jesus Christ. And that's where I think all of us want to get to, is that's where we are. And if there's obstacles in your way that's stopping that from happening, today is the day for us to just reevaluate and just take a step back and look. Maybe we're doing better than we think we're doing, and sometimes we just are giving ourselves, a hard time, and we don't see some of the things that God is doing with us that maybe we should. So maybe that's part of it, but maybe there is also maybe some things that we could tweak a little bit here or there. Maybe we wave a little more. Maybe we smile a little more. Maybe we hug a little more. Maybe we say God bless you a little more. Maybe we just continue to be ourselves, but understand that when you're yourself and you're following God's Spirit, you're doing what God wants you to do and you're representing Him. I hope that makes sense. That's our identity. And we can't let time and other things be such a robber to steal that identity. But let's go forth under the gospel of Jesus Christ and know I am January and I'm a follower of God. And all the other stuff that's going to go with that is there. But yet God will continue to see through. May God bless you.